plug into this device, and we read, and we get it directly to the patient. So at some point we'll have that. And output into this system, so into this application, will be, again, the data that the patient will need, the content type of information. What do you have? This is what you expect, the treatment plan, and also your history of the meds you're taking, what you're taking them, why you're taking them, and so on, when you should take them. Notifications in terms of it's 7 o'clock, you should take your med. In 10 minutes, it is the med you have to take. All of that is going to be output into from the center. We're also looking at communication, and there I'm not going to say what it is yet, but communications with the healthcare system, with the healthcare team. Because that's going to take many different forms, right? Because it depends on who the patient is dealing with. It could simply be, these are my observations, you send them to me by fax, and we say, no, what if we email them to you, and so on. So the information can also go, it's communication, and then notification, right? That can go to the team, so to the healthcare team. So again, the idea here is, and that's something that we really have to understand based on our research. What we need to understand is what should this be as a medium? Is it a web portal? Is it a doctor-specific application? And how we'll do that? So I think we don't know yet for sure. I'm leaning toward just having an app, and because for various reasons. But there's also debated whether it should be a web-based portal. So, but for now, let's understand that there has to be a medium to communicate to the healthcare team, and depends on the information being communicated, it could take different form. In the case of the symptom, the phlegm colored example, the data might want to see specifically that display, and we can send a picture associated with that. In case of sending we talked about the patient can have multiple healthcare teams, and both teams might want to see the same test results. And so we need to send it to both of them. And each one of them have a different way to receive that information. So we have to be flexible in that way. Hence, exactly what that medium is going to be, I think we still have to make some effort there. But the way I think we still, clearly, that should be a mobile app, because we're thinking about really having that as a companion install, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing the rest of the time?
Oh, we're doing fine. I was just, I remembered this last night, and you just triggered that. We don't have, as part of our questions, what mobile app patients are using.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you guys that, and they didn't invite me, they kick me out, that I'm not involved. So I wanted to ask you, I was going to wait when they review the questions to find out, asking people.
Yeah, well, we need to ask that. We didn't ask that yesterday with Dr. Laxmi, but she is, I know for the, Laxmi, who's an MD, but I know she has a smartphone, but we need to ask the practitioners and the patients. So we'll get to that. All right.
So to split this up, all of this, right, and all of this is going to be based on a cloud-based system, and this system is going to be composed of multiple components, but the idea is that we build this, it sits in the cloud somewhere, wherever we decide to host it, and it's going to have different components to it. So let me just, because I don't do this, it's too early for us about this, so I'm going to just very briefly go over some of the elements of the architecture. Okay. When you think about the system, first it's a set of entities. Notice when we talk about patient observations, and what you have to realize is the system is that as a patient is in the middle of this, and what you have, we have the patient observations, right? Then we have the meds, we have the actions that they have to take, and we have the condition. We have the physicians that they're dealing with, and the symptoms, the schedule. All of those aspects are different entities that are interacting with the patient, and the patient is interacting with. So between themselves, there have to be connections between themselves also. There have to be what we call relationships between themselves. So what happened then, we saw an observation, is it related to this man? To have to be that relationship system to understand. So we see this observation, and it's who do we talk to? Do we talk to that physician? Because that's physician who prescribed this medication. So we have to understand how those things interact with each other and how they impact each other. And the intelligence of the system is sitting on top and watching and dealing with all those things. So you can think of the system having a set of big major components. So the first part of this is what I call the entity mapper, the entity manager. That's the thing that when the user comes in, you enter
What did you call it?
entity manager.
Okay.
So the entity manager is when we provision the patient, right? We put an observation in the system. We put a patient in the system. This is all the entities, the definition of those things, of those objects coming into the system. Okay? So that the entity manager is going to receive its information from somewhere. The patient then say, this is me, the medication and so on. Or the content team is going to fill the system with a lot of observation information, a lot of test information, a lot of symptoms information, medication information. The content team is going to have their own tool to enter those things into the system. So we're building the system. But also, so once you understand about the patient, we know the patient, we know the observations, we know the medications, we know all that stuff. So now, the patient is interacting with the system. The patient enters an observation. The patient changes medication. Those things are interacting with the system. So we're going to look at all those things as events into the system. Okay. Right? So send your test result today at 2 o'clock. But when that happens, should we receive it, put it in our database, show the little graph? No, I think we can do that. But we need to figure out what does that mean to that patient. We receive a new medication. Is that medication can have an interaction with another medication, right? And if we've seen there's some intelligence to understand what is it that a new medication in the system should trigger. And so all those things again are dealing with the entities and providing knowledge somewhere. And think of it this way, for each patient, so that means this system has to be watching each patient. So if you take it in isolation, you got this person at home, and you got this caregiver, right? What we want to be is being a little bit of this caregiver. So we're always watching that patient. So when anything happens, if anything happens, it's not about the 200 or 2 million users that we will have someday in the system. It's about that one patient, right? So we got this concept of a watcher. The watcher is that entity that sits there and receiving events and information about that patient. And figure out exactly what do we need to do, what should happen here. But the watcher is also looking at predefined schedule. That person needs to take their medication at 7 o'clock. So everything comes to the watcher to understand, I'm watching over this patient. But the one thing the watcher has to have is access to the behavioral analysis. This is the heart of the system. This is really the brain of that system. This is where all your rules and all your inference, all your correlation, all your analysis is going to come from. This is the thing that when the watcher said, we just received a observation event. And this guy's going to kick off, go into his knowledge base and figure it out and come back and say, with a verdict. Right? And then the watcher is going to figure out and say, oh, in that case, I need to notify the patient. So there's no notifier component. We're to notify the patient, notify the doctor, and so then notify our component.